right, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to begin Chapter 9, Orient, Orienting Students to Lab Activities. Usually the first day of class is probably one of the most chaotic and wild and crazy days of the new school year. I know I've been doing this quite a while, and it never fails that you look like you get everything planned and everything set up. Get yourself organized for that first day of class so that you can just really hit it hard and get those students started right. And then all of a sudden something happens, and chaos always ensues. And so I learned a long time ago not to fight it, just to embrace it and roll with the flow. But obviously the first few days of class are very, very important to kind of set the tone for that school year and make it crystal clear to all of those students what's going to be expected of them. So let's see what your book has to say. I think you're going to see this is probably one of the shortest chapters in the whole book. Certainly there's nothing wrong with that. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at these couple of slides that I've got for us for Chapter 9. First of all, it's a great thing to be able to kind of do some personal introductions, be able to introduce yourself to your students, and then obviously let the students kind of introduce themselves to the class. I know for some teachers, they'll have some kind of like a little icebreaker activities set up. Some teachers will have them kind of fill out a form that has some certain demographic information, contact information. I think that's a great thing. And normally the first day, you're not going to do a whole lot of teaching anyway. So make some introductions, get some information from your students that day, so that they can kind of get acclimated to the new environment, and certainly you can get the information that you need from an administrative side to be able to run your class. Second, and certainly this is no level of importance, but if it were, this would be number one, and that's safety. We have got to have a safety orientation with these students, as we mentioned in the chapter on safety, as soon as possible before anything else takes place. They've got to be crystal clear on all the safety aspects and the expectations that you're going to have for safety for them in that classroom. And so that's got to be drilled in them the first day. Now, that doesn't mean that we stop there. Safety is an ongoing process. So little safety meetings or safety refreshers and things like that, we want to always keep doing that. But that first day, or very close to it, they need to have their orientation to the safety rules of that of your program. Then, of course, you can start laying out your objectives, what you want to accomplish that in that course, that semester, that academic year, whatever the length of time is you've got those students. Now, I'm kind of going to tie in that point right there with the next one. A great way to do it is to have some kind of syllabus that describes the course, describes the learning outcomes, provides in written form the objectives, expectations, any kinds of grading scales that you've got and things like that. All that can be in one place for the student to be able to read and to hang on to. And then obviously it protects you as an instructor if something does go wrong or else something does happen. Well, you have that student, especially having a signed syllabus that they have read and they understand those rules uh, and regulations to back you up. That if they say, well, I didn't know, well, pull out the sheet of paper that it says and shows their signature saying, yes, you did sign this, that you read it and understood it. It'll certainly help to kind of minimize the damage that litigation could take on ourselves and also the school system. Then, of course, need to be able to tell them some way about how projects and assignments and supplies are kind of going to be uh, given and assigned to them during the year, and so inventory control is important. They need to understand what kind of methods you've got, and we talked about inventory a couple of chapters ago. So uh, that first day or first couple of class periods is a great time to be able to lay that out for them, kind of demonstrate it to them, so that it's clear in their minds what to expect. And of course, lab maintenance, like we've said before, we have to be able to maintain equipment, keep it running, and let's face it, it's going to break. Just a matter of time. And certainly we want to use all of the equipment that we've got to help students learn and to get the skills that they need. And so, how are you going to approach the lab maintenance and tell them how to let you know when something needs to be readjusted, or else one of the machines or pieces of equipment in the lab is in need of some work. And so knowing that procedure is important. Also, attendance policy. Um, let's face it, a lot of students like to miss school, and every school system, secondary, post-secondary, it doesn't matter, all has attendance policies. And students need to know what's an excused absence, what's an unexcused absence, how many absences can they have in a certain period of time before they are either dropped, or else if they'll fail the course, and so forth. So that's a great place to put that information is in the syllabus that you can hand out to them the first day of class and go over with them and lay it out and have them sign that they know and understand what the attendance policy is. And it certainly is important for those of us on the post-secondary side for student financial aid, all the Pell requirements that they have for attendance. And then finally, out of this little list is student behavior. You need and I need to lay out right straight from the get-go what kind of behavior we expect from our students. And certainly from those of us that teach in the post-secondary situation, we would expect them to behave like young ladies and gentlemen and as mature adults, but unfortunately some of them that look like they're adults haven't grown up yet, and they certainly sometimes present behavior problems. And of course, at the secondary level, have a whole lot of students that act out misbehavior and horseplay in our labs, and so they need to know what your policy and the institution's policy is for behavior, and if that behavior is the rules are broken, then they need to know what the consequences are. And and stick to them. You know, I was told when I started my teaching career, just start off and don't cut them any kind of slack. My old mentor, Coach, told me that Coach Neeson said that you can always slack off, but you can't tighten up. And Coach Neeson was right. He had taught for 30 years, and said, you can always give them some leeway on some things later on, once they know you aren't going to put up with any kind of behavior. You can then kind of loosen the noose, as he described it. And that means that not letting them do whatever they want, but that you've built a level of respect and trust on their part, and that and fairness, that they know without a shadow of a doubt what you expect from them. And so you can kind of ease up a little bit and maybe smile a little bit more than what you smile, and kind of be a little more at ease, instead of being, I guess, in a state of authority all the time. So I tried to model that when I taught secondary level, because at one time I never cracked a smile in the classroom. And I had behavior problems. Well, I tried kind of using the Coach Neeson's philosophy, and yeah, I was tough on them. I didn't let anything slide. But once they had that idea of what I expected, then I let them at least have a little more freedom. And they did. Of course, whenever they did misbehave, came down back on them again. But they knew what to expect, and that's the difference. It's all about having students know exactly what's expected of them. And so, what are some other activities that we ought to do in the orientation? Certainly, the dress and apparel that students should have in our labs is of utmost importance, because certainly those can be safety hazards in our labs. Like in our welding program, they have certain types of shoes they have to wear, gloves, cotton apparel, and so those students need to get those things. I know in our health occupations department, they have sort of color-coded scrubs. The nurses are one color, the patient care technicians are another color. They think it helps to identify those students, and also kind of give them a sense of belonging as a group, kind of build some team spirit with them. And I think that's a good thing. But appropriate lab apparel, and also that also whether or not you have uniforms or certain types of apparel for them to wear. Obviously, if they're in a lab and they're like in a chemistry lab, then they may have some kind of protective apron or something like that they'll wear, and certainly safety glasses, that which also is part of that apparel. Then you have what is called competency-based education. As a former trade school teacher, we practice competency-based education, where all of our programs were based on the skills and competencies that students needed to know. Yes, they had some knowledge that they had to get from textbooks and those kinds of things, but it was all applying that knowledge and building skill. And we had numerous kinds of lab exercises, projects that students had to complete. And as they completed those exercises and were graded on them, they were building their skill in that particular area. And I thought it was and still is a wonderful way to learn. And I would certainly love to see it expanded at the secondary and post-secondary level for those students who can kind of learn at their own speed. We know no two students learn at the same rate. Those students that are sort of self-starters and are good enough to be able to pick up on what it is we're trying to teach very quickly, I think are done us disservice by being held back so that we can bring all of them along as a class. Those students that need a little extra time to be able to acquire some skills and knowledge, but yet because we're on a strict time frame, I think are also held to a disadvantage because of us having to cover so much information in a certain amount of time, and we can't give them that little extra that they would need to be able to acquire the skill. And then finally we have the group that's going to struggle because of whatever reason that they have. Well, using a competency-based model, then an instructor could spend the time that they would need with them, because the students all know what they have to do, in what sequence they'd have to get it done. And let's face it, for adults, I think the industry is going to expect them to be able to learn on their own, make themselves self-starters when it comes to learning. And I always, from experience, believe that competency education puts the responsibility for learning on the student, instead of the teacher just force feeding and just trying to shove knowledge and skills down there into their brain and pack it in there. In a competency-based model, the teacher becomes sort of their guide, being able to use his or her expertise in that subject matter to kind of, try to, I guess, help them to model the kind of behavior they need as a skilled worker, as well as know and have the confidence in their ability to be able to perform. Then last but not least, grading. What kind of grading scale do you use? Getting back to the syllabus, that's a great place to put all that down in black and white, where they know what kind of test they're going to have, if you weight your scores, what the weight values are, how many tests they're going to get, pop quizzes, whatever it is that you use to grade. And especially if you have kind of grades for their work that they do in the lab, like for our welding shop. Student starts laying down some beads. They show the instructor grades it, pass, fail. And then if they fail, they go back and they're told exactly what they need to do to change it. So they either grind everything up or cut it up and try again. That kind of process build skill, but also the student knows exactly why they received the grade that they did. And certainly our regular old paper and pencil or computerized testing, those grades, especially like as you see here with Jewel. I mean, I don't know why a teacher's not using some kind of system like this to be able to give tests if they have the ability to in a computer lab, because it's just so easy to grade tests and that student get instant feedback on their grades. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this particular chapter. It was a short one, but there's nothing, like I said, more important than us getting off to the right way for the first day of class, and that sort of sets the tone for the rest of the year. And so with that, I'll go ahead and end this lecture on chapter 9 right now.